Question 1. Investigation of the admission process for a highly qualified applicant to the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam reveals that the applicant's parent is a prominent figure in the National Aviation Regulatory Body. The applicant has met all the minimum academic and examination score requirements, but their overall profile is not as strong as some other candidates who have also met the minimums. The parent has subtly indicated to university officials that a favorable admission decision would be beneficial for future institutional collaborations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Aeronautical University Institute's admissions committee to ensure adherence to the exam's regulatory framework and maintain institutional integrity? Option A. Conduct a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's qualifications against the established entrance exam criteria, making a decision based solely on merit and without regard to the parent's position or the potential for future collaborations. Option B. Grant admission to the applicant due to the significant influence and potential benefits their parent's position could bring to the university's future collaborations. Option C. Seek informal advice from the parent's colleagues within the aviation regulatory body to gauge the appropriateness of admitting the applicant, considering the potential for institutional benefits. Option D. Reject the applicant's application immediately, assuming that the parent's involvement indicates an attempt to improperly influence the process, regardless of the applicant's qualifications. Correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's qualifications against the established entrance exam criteria, making a decision based solely on merit and without regard to the parent's position or the potential for future collaborations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity, the university's reputation, and the potential for a student to face undue hardship. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam's regulatory framework emphasizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established admission criteria. A key aspect of this framework is the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants, ensuring that admission decisions are based on merit and objective assessment, not on external pressures or preferential treatment. The challenge lies in upholding these principles, while also considering the individual circumstances of an applicant. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of the applicant's qualifications against the established entrance exam criteria, without allowing external influences to sway the decision. This aligns with the regulatory framework's mandate for impartial admissions processes. The university must ensure that its admission standards are applied consistently to all candidates, thereby safeguarding the integrity of its academic programs and the credibility of its entrance examinations. Any deviation from these standards, even with good intentions, could set a precedent that undermines the fairness of future admissions and potentially lead to challenges from other applicants. An incorrect approach would be to grant preferential treatment based on the applicant's family's influence or potential future contributions to the aviation industry. This violates the principle of equal opportunity and the objective assessment of merit mandated by the exam's regulatory framework. Such an action could be seen as a breach of ethical conduct, as it introduces bias into the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the application outright without a thorough review, simply due to the applicant's perceived lack of immediate qualifications. While adherence to standards is crucial, the regulatory framework also implicitly supports a fair evaluation process. Ignoring the application entirely, without due diligence, could be perceived as a failure to conduct a proper assessment, potentially leading to accusations of procedural unfairness. A further incorrect approach would be to seek external validation or advice from individuals outside the designated admissions committee or university administration regarding this specific applicant's case. This circumvents the established internal review process and could introduce undue influence or bias, compromising the integrity of the decision-making. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to the established regulatory framework and ethical guidelines. This includes 1. Understanding and strictly adhering to the Aeronautical University Institute's admission policies and entrance exam criteria. 2. Conducting a fair and objective evaluation of all applicants based solely on their submitted qualifications and performance in the entrance exam. 3. Documenting the decision-making process meticulously, ensuring transparency and accountability. 4. Consulting with the appropriate internal authorities, e.g., Admissions committee, legal counsel, if any ambiguity or ethical dilemma arises, rather than seeking external or informal opinions. 5. Prioritizing the long-term integrity and reputation of the institution over short-term pressures or individual circumstances that fall outside the established criteria. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that a faculty member has raised concerns about a potential leak of examination content for the upcoming Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam. The institute's administration is considering how to respond, weighing the need for prompt action against the potential disruption to the admissions timeline. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines for the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam? Option A. Immediately initiate a thorough investigation into the alleged leak, temporarily suspending the distribution of examination materials to all candidates until the matter is resolved, and consulting the relevant regulatory bodies for guidance on next steps. Option B. Proceed with the scheduled distribution of examination materials as planned, while privately advising the faculty member to monitor their students for any suspicious behavior during the exam. Option C. Offer supplementary preparatory materials to all candidates, including hints about the general topics that will be covered, to ensure a more equitable testing environment given the potential for information asymmetry. Option D. Issue a general statement to all candidates reminding them of the importance of academic integrity and the consequences of cheating, without conducting a specific investigation into the alleged leak. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a thorough investigation into the alleged leak, temporarily suspending the distribution of examination materials to all candidates until the matter is resolved, and consulting the relevant regulatory bodies for guidance on next steps. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of academic integrity and fair admissions. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam is governed by specific regulations designed to ensure a standardized and equitable assessment process for all aspiring students. Adherence to these regulations is paramount to maintaining the credibility of the institute and the value of its degrees. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the entrance examination process as mandated by the Aeronautical University Institute's governing statutes and the National Ministry of Education's guidelines for higher education admissions. This means ensuring that all candidates are assessed on a level playing field, free from any undue advantage or disadvantage. Specifically, the regulations likely stipulate strict protocols for exam administration, including the secure handling of examination materials and the prohibition of any unauthorized assistance or pre-release of information. Upholding these rules is essential for fair competition and for identifying candidates who possess the genuine aptitude and knowledge required for aeronautical studies. An incorrect approach would be to provide advance information about the examination content to a specific group of students, even if framed as a preparatory measure. This directly violates the principle of equal opportunity and the regulatory requirement for a standardized assessment. Such an action undermines the validity of the entrance exam, potentially admitting students who are not adequately prepared and disadvantaging those who relied solely on legitimate study methods. It also exposes the institute to severe reputational damage and potential sanctions from regulatory bodies. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concerns raised by the faculty member without thorough investigation. The regulations typically mandate a process for addressing potential breaches of examination security or fairness. Ignoring such concerns abdicates the responsibility to uphold these standards and could allow irregularities to persist, further compromising the integrity of the admissions process. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic review of the university's internal policies and the external regulatory framework governing entrance examinations. This includes consulting relevant sections of the Aeronautical University Institute's charter, the Ministry of Education's directives on admissions, and any specific examination security protocols. A thorough investigation into the alleged leak should be initiated, involving all relevant parties, to ascertain the facts. Based on the findings, appropriate actions must be taken to rectify any breaches, ensure fairness to all candidates, and reinforce adherence to regulatory requirements for future examinations. Question 3. Operational review demonstrates that the Aeronautical University Institute is considering the adoption of a new advanced flight simulator technology that promises enhanced realism and training capabilities. However, initial pilot feedback indicates a steep learning curve and concerns about the fidelity of certain emergency procedure simulations. The Institute's leadership is eager to showcase technological advancement to potential donors and government funding bodies, which approach best balances the Institute's strategic objectives with its regulatory obligations and commitment to pilot safety and education. Option A. Prioritize the immediate public demonstration of the new simulator's capabilities to secure funding, with a secondary, less rigorous training protocol for pilots. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive pilot training program on the new simulator, including extensive validation of emergency procedure simulations by experienced instructors and safety officers, before integrating it into the core curriculum. Option C. Implement the new simulator immediately for all advanced flight training programs, with a plan to address pilot feedback and simulation fidelity issues post-deployment. Option D. Defer the adoption of the new simulator until all pilot feedback is fully resolved and the technology is proven to be flawless, potentially delaying the Institute's modernization efforts. The correct answer is C. Implement the new simulator immediately for all advanced flight training programs, with a plan to address pilot feedback and simulation fidelity issues post-deployment. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate operational needs and the long-term strategic goals of the Aeronautical University Institute, particularly concerning the integration of new technologies. The pressure to demonstrate progress and secure funding can lead to shortcuts or a focus on superficial adoption rather than genuine, sustainable integration. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing demands while adhering to the Institute's mission and the regulatory framework governing its operations. The correct approach involves a phased, evidence-based integration strategy that prioritizes pilot training and safety protocols before full operational deployment. This aligns with the Aeronautical University Institute's commitment to producing highly skilled aviation professionals and maintaining the highest safety standards. Regulatory compliance is paramount, ensuring that all new technologies are introduced in a manner that meets or exceeds established aviation safety regulations and best practices for pilot education. This approach fosters a culture of continuous improvement and responsible innovation, an approach that focuses solely on rapid deployment without adequate pilot training and safety validation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It risks compromising flight safety, which is a non-negotiable principle in aviation education and operations. Furthermore, it would violate the Institute's duty of care to its students and instructors. An approach that delays integration indefinitely due to minor technical concerns without a clear plan for resolution would also be professionally unsound. This could lead to the Institute falling behind in technological advancements, impacting its educational quality and competitive standing, and potentially failing to meet its strategic objectives for modernization. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, consultation with relevant stakeholders, including faculty, safety officers, and regulatory bodies, and the development of a clear, phased implementation plan. This plan should include defined milestones, performance metrics, and contingency measures, ensuring that technological adoption is both innovative and responsible, prioritizing safety and educational efficacy above all else. Question 4. When evaluating a potential research partnership with an aerospace industry firm that offers significant funding, what is the most appropriate initial step for the Aeronautical University Institute to ensure academic integrity and ethical compliance? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive, independent review of the proposed research project's scientific merit, ethical implications, and alignment with the university's academic mission and policies. Option B. Accept the funding offer based on the industry partner's reputation and proceed with the research as outlined by the firm. Option C. Prioritize the industry partner's timeline for research commencement and adjust the university's internal review processes accordingly. Option D. Immediately begin drafting a collaborative research agreement to secure the funding as quickly as possible. The correct answer is D. Immediately begin drafting a collaborative research agreement to secure the funding as quickly as possible. Explanation: This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate financial interests of the university and the long-term reputational and ethical obligations associated with academic integrity and responsible research. The Aeronautical University Institute, as an educational and research institution, has a duty to uphold high standards of academic honesty and to ensure that its research outputs are credible and ethically sound. The pressure to secure funding from a potential industry partner, while beneficial for the university's resources, must not compromise these fundamental principles. Careful judgment is required to balance the pursuit of financial stability with the commitment to academic excellence and ethical conduct. The correct approach involves prioritizing the thorough and independent review of the research proposal, ensuring that all potential conflicts of interest are identified and managed transparently, and that the research aligns with the university's academic mission and ethical guidelines. This approach upholds the integrity of the research process and protects the university's reputation. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of academic freedom, research ethics, and institutional responsibility, which are implicitly or explicitly embedded in the regulatory framework governing higher education institutions. The focus is on due diligence and ethical stewardship of the university's academic endeavors, an approach that prioritizes securing the funding without a rigorous, independent review of the research proposal's scientific merit and ethical implications would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to the acceptance of research that is flawed, biased, or even unethical, thereby damaging the university's credibility and potentially leading to negative consequences for the students and faculty involved. Similarly, an approach that attempts to expedite the review process to meet the industry partner's timeline, while overlooking potential red flags or conflicts of interest, would also be a failure. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to due diligence and a prioritization of financial gain over academic integrity. Furthermore, an approach that fails to disclose potential conflicts of interest to relevant stakeholders, such as the Research Ethics Board or the university's governing body, violates principles of transparency and accountability. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the university's mission, values, and governing regulations. This involves identifying all stakeholders and their interests, assessing potential risks and benefits of different courses of action, and consulting relevant ethical guidelines and policies. A systematic process of risk assessment and mitigation, coupled with open communication and transparency, is crucial for navigating complex situations where financial interests intersect with academic and ethical responsibilities. Prioritizing long-term institutional integrity and public trust over short-term financial gains is a hallmark of professional decision-making in academia. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates a potential misalignment between the Aeronautical University Institute's stated commitment to merit-based admissions and observed practices that appear to favor applicants with strong institutional connections, potentially impacting the fairness and integrity of the entrance process. Considering the Institute's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines, which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response from the Institute's leadership? Option A. Form an independent committee to thoroughly investigate the governance review's findings, analyze existing admission policies against regulatory requirements and ethical standards, and propose evidence-based recommendations for improvement. Option B. Focus solely on enhancing marketing efforts to attract a broader range of applicants, assuming that increased competition will naturally address any perceived issues with favoritism. Option C. Issue a public statement reassuring stakeholders that the Institute's admissions process remains fair and unbiased, and dismiss the governance review's findings as anecdotal evidence. Option D. Immediately implement stricter, more opaque vetting procedures for all applicants to prevent any perceived favoritism, without publicly acknowledging the review's findings. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement stricter, more opaque vetting procedures for all applicants to prevent any perceived favoritism, without publicly acknowledging the review's findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's strategic goals and the ethical obligations of its faculty and staff. The Aeronautical University Institute, like any educational institution, operates under a framework of regulations and ethical guidelines designed to ensure academic integrity, fair admission processes, and responsible resource allocation. The governance review highlights a potential disconnect between stated objectives and actual practices, requiring careful judgment to uphold the institute's reputation and compliance. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent engagement with the findings of the governance review. This means acknowledging the identified issues, initiating a thorough investigation into the root causes, and developing a comprehensive action plan to address any discrepancies. This approach is justified by the fundamental principles of good governance, which mandate accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement. Specifically, it aligns with the ethical duty of educational institutions to maintain high standards of academic and administrative practice, ensuring that all decisions are made in the best interest of the students and the wider academic community. Adherence to the institute's internal policies and any relevant national educational oversight regulations would be paramount. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the governance review's findings without proper consideration. This failure to acknowledge potential systemic issues undermines accountability and can lead to the perpetuation of unethical or non-compliant practices. Another incorrect approach would be to implement superficial changes without addressing the underlying causes identified in the review. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to genuine improvement and can be seen as a procedural compliance rather than a substantive one, potentially violating ethical obligations to stakeholders. Furthermore, attempting to conceal or downplay the findings would be a severe ethical breach, damaging trust and potentially leading to more significant regulatory repercussions. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a systematic process. First, thoroughly understand the scope and implications of the governance review's findings. Second, consult relevant internal policies, ethical codes, and external regulatory frameworks applicable to the Aeronautical University Institute. Third, engage in open and honest communication with relevant stakeholders, including faculty, administration, and potentially oversight bodies. Fourth, develop and implement a robust action plan with clear timelines and accountability measures. Finally, establish mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and evaluation to ensure sustained compliance and ethical conduct. Question 6. Analysis of the Aeronautical University Institute's Admissions Committee's responsibility during the entrance exam period, considering the pressure to meet enrollment targets while upholding academic integrity. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to candidate selection? Option A. Provide advance notice of challenging question types to candidates who have demonstrated strong extracurricular involvement in aviation-related activities, giving them a strategic advantage. Option B. Strictly adhere to the established examination criteria and academic merit for all applicants, ensuring a transparent and equitable selection process. Option C. Expedite the admission of a candidate from a prominent aviation family, even if their examination scores are slightly below the typical threshold, to secure a valuable connection for the university. Option D. Develop a modified, less challenging version of the entrance exam for candidates identified as having potential but lacking in specific test-taking skills, to increase their chances of admission. The correct answer is B. Strictly adhere to the established examination criteria and academic merit for all applicants, ensuring a transparent and equitable selection process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate financial interests of the university and the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning academic integrity and fair admissions. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam is governed by specific regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines that prioritize transparency, fairness, and the accurate assessment of candidates' potential. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a temptation to compromise these principles. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial evaluation of all applicants based solely on the established entrance examination criteria and academic merit, as mandated by the Aeronautical University Institute's charter and relevant national educational regulations. This ensures that the admissions process is fair, transparent, and upholds the academic standards of the institution. Adherence to these regulations prevents any perception of bias or preferential treatment, safeguarding the university's reputation and the integrity of its degrees. An incorrect approach that prioritizes securing a specific, high-profile candidate over objective assessment would violate fundamental principles of fairness and meritocracy enshrined in educational regulations. This could lead to the admission of underqualified individuals, potentially compromising the quality of education and the reputation of graduates. Furthermore, such an action could be construed as a breach of ethical conduct by the admissions committee and university administration, potentially leading to disciplinary action or legal challenges. Another incorrect approach, which involves creating a separate, less rigorous assessment for certain candidates, undermines the uniformity and validity of the entrance examination. This directly contravenes the regulatory requirement for a standardized and equitable admissions process. It introduces an element of subjectivity and potential discrimination, eroding trust in the institution's admissions procedures. A third incorrect approach, which involves selectively disclosing information about the examination to certain candidates, constitutes a breach of confidentiality and fairness. Educational regulations typically require all candidates to have equal access to information and opportunities during the admissions process. Such selective disclosure creates an unfair advantage and violates the principle of equal opportunity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulatory framework and ethical codes. Professionals must prioritize adherence to these guidelines, even when faced with external pressures. A structured approach would involve 1. Identifying the core principles and regulations governing the situation. 2. Evaluating potential actions against these principles and regulations. 3. Consulting with relevant stakeholders or ethics committees if ambiguity exists. 4. Documenting the decision-making process and rationale. 5. Acting with integrity and transparency. Question 7. Quality control measures reveal a statistically significant anomaly in the performance data of a cohort of candidates for the Aeronautical University Institute's entrance exam, with a pattern suggesting potential external influence on a subset of applicants. A prominent industry partner, whose representative is a key member of the university's advisory board and a significant donor, has expressed keen interest in the admission outcomes of this specific cohort. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the Institute's admissions committee? Option A. Overlook the quality control findings as a potential statistical outlier and proceed with admissions as planned to avoid any perception of impropriety that could jeopardize the relationship with the industry partner. Option B. Publicly announce the anomaly and suspend the admissions process indefinitely pending a full investigation, without first consulting internal policies or engaging relevant stakeholders. Option C. Initiate an immediate and thorough independent review of the quality control findings, engaging relevant academic and administrative departments to determine the nature and extent of the anomaly, and to ensure adherence to all examination integrity protocols. Option D. Acknowledge the donor's interest and discreetly inform them of the general candidate pool's performance without disclosing the specific anomaly, while proceeding with admissions based on the original scores. Correct answer is C. Initiate an immediate and thorough independent review of the quality control findings, engaging relevant academic and administrative departments to determine the nature and extent of the anomaly, and to ensure adherence to all examination integrity protocols. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maintaining academic integrity and responding to external pressures. The Aeronautical University Institute, as an educational body, has a primary responsibility to uphold the standards and fairness of its entrance examinations. The pressure from a potential donor introduces an external influence that could compromise these core values. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without violating ethical principles or established examination protocols. The correct approach involves a transparent and principled response that prioritizes the integrity of the examination process. This means acknowledging the quality control findings and initiating a thorough, impartial review. The university's regulatory framework, as established by its governing body and any relevant national accreditation standards for higher education and aviation, would mandate adherence to fair assessment practices. This approach ensures that all candidates are evaluated on merit, upholding the reputation and credibility of the institute. It aligns with ethical guidelines for academic institutions that prohibit undue influence on admissions or assessment processes. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the quality control findings without proper investigation. This action would represent a failure to uphold the university's commitment to fair assessment and could lead to accusations of bias or preferential treatment. Ethically, it would be a dereliction of duty to ignore evidence of potential irregularities. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately accede to the donor's implied request to overlook the findings. This would not only violate academic integrity, but also create a dangerous precedent, potentially leading to future compromises and undermining the trust placed in the institute by students, faculty, and the wider aviation community. Such an action would likely contravene internal university policies on admissions and examinations, as well as broader principles of good governance in educational institutions. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core principles at stake: academic integrity, fairness, and transparency. They should then consult relevant internal policies and external regulatory guidelines governing examinations and admissions. The next step is to gather all pertinent information, including the quality control report. Based on this evidence, a course of action should be determined that upholds these principles, even if it is unpopular or presents a challenge. Communication should be clear, honest, and directed through appropriate channels, ensuring that all stakeholders are informed of the process and its outcomes in a timely manner. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates a growing demand from both students and faculty for the integration of advanced, AI-driven flight simulation software to enhance pilot training realism and research capabilities. However, the Institute's current procurement policy mandates a lengthy, multi-stage approval process for any new technology, requiring extensive validation against existing aviation training standards and a comprehensive risk assessment. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Institute's leadership to address this feedback while adhering to its regulatory framework? Option A. Expedite the procurement of the AI simulation software by leveraging emergency provisions within the policy, citing the need to maintain competitive training standards. Option B. Initiate a formal review process for the proposed AI simulation software, engaging with regulatory bodies and internal safety committees to ensure compliance and demonstrate its alignment with educational and safety objectives. Option C. Authorize individual departments to procure and implement their preferred simulation tools independently to meet immediate needs, with a promise of future consolidation. Option D. Postpone the decision to acquire new simulation technology until the current procurement policy is revised to be more accommodating of rapid technological advancements. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal review process for the proposed AI simulation software, engaging with regulatory bodies and internal safety committees to ensure compliance and demonstrate its alignment with educational and safety objectives. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate operational needs and the long-term strategic goals of the Aeronautical University Institute, particularly concerning the integration of new technologies. The need for rapid adoption of advanced simulation software, as highlighted by student and faculty feedback, clashes with the established procurement and approval processes designed to ensure compliance, safety, and financial prudence. Navigating this requires a balanced approach that respects regulatory frameworks while fostering innovation. The correct approach involves a proactive and collaborative engagement with the relevant regulatory bodies and internal stakeholders. This entails initiating a formal review process for the new simulation software, clearly articulating its benefits, and demonstrating how it aligns with or can be adapted to existing safety and training standards. This approach respects the established regulatory framework for technology adoption within the Institute, ensuring that any new system meets the required benchmarks for educational effectiveness and operational integrity. It also fosters transparency and builds consensus, mitigating potential future objections or delays. An incorrect approach would be to bypass or circumvent the established procurement and approval processes. This might involve the direct purchase or implementation of the software without proper vetting, potentially leading to non-compliance with aviation training regulations or internal university policies. Such an action would undermine the integrity of the Institute's governance and could result in significant financial penalties, safety concerns, or the need for costly remediation if the software proves incompatible or inadequate. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the stakeholder feedback entirely, prioritizing the status quo over the expressed needs of students and faculty. This demonstrates a lack of responsiveness and could lead to a decline in the quality of education and research, ultimately impacting the institute's reputation and accreditation. It fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of the aviation industry and the importance of keeping training methodologies current. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough understanding of the Aeronautical University Institute's governing regulations, including those related to curriculum development, technology acquisition, and aviation safety standards. It requires active listening to stakeholder concerns, followed by a systematic evaluation of proposed solutions against these regulatory requirements and the Institute's strategic objectives. Professionals should then engage in open communication with all parties, seeking to find solutions that are both innovative and compliant, thereby ensuring the long-term success and integrity of the Institute. Question 9. Research into a potential breach of examination integrity during the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam has surfaced credible allegations of a candidate receiving unauthorized assistance. The university administration is under pressure to finalize admissions quickly to meet enrollment targets. Considering the university's commitment to academic excellence and fair assessment, what is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Disregard the allegations due to the urgency of enrollment targets and the potential for lengthy investigations. Option B. Immediately disqualify the candidate based on the initial allegations to maintain the perceived integrity of the exam. Option C. Proceed with the admission of the candidate while noting the allegations, with a promise to investigate post-admission. Option D. Conduct a thorough, independent investigation into the allegations, ensuring due process for the candidate before making any final admission decisions. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough, independent investigation into the allegations, ensuring due process for the candidate before making any final admission decisions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning research integrity and academic standards. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam framework emphasizes adherence to principles of transparency, fairness, and academic honesty. Decisions made under pressure, especially those impacting the integrity of the admissions process, require careful judgment to uphold these core values. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the entrance examination and the university's reputation by conducting a thorough, independent investigation into the alleged misconduct. This upholds the regulatory framework by ensuring that all candidates are assessed fairly and that the admissions process is not compromised by unethical practices. It aligns with the principles of academic integrity, which are paramount in any educational institution, and specifically within the context of an entrance exam designed to select future aviation professionals. This approach demonstrates a commitment to due process and evidence-based decision-making, which are fundamental to maintaining trust and credibility. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disqualifying the candidate without a proper investigation fails to adhere to principles of natural justice and due process. It risks penalizing an individual based on unsubstantiated allegations, which is ethically unsound and could lead to reputational damage for the university if the allegations are found to be false. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the allegations due to time constraints or pressure from stakeholders, directly violates the university's responsibility to maintain a fair and transparent admissions process. This inaction can be interpreted as condoning or overlooking potential misconduct, thereby undermining the credibility of the entire examination system. A third incorrect approach, which is to conduct a superficial or biased investigation, also fails to meet the standards of academic integrity and fairness. Such an approach would not provide a reliable basis for decision-making and could lead to unjust outcomes, further eroding trust in the institution. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the allegation and its potential impact. This should be followed by a commitment to a fair and thorough investigation, adhering strictly to established university policies and any relevant external guidelines for academic integrity. The process should involve gathering evidence, providing the accused with an opportunity to respond, and making a decision based on the findings. Transparency, impartiality, and adherence to due process are the cornerstones of this framework, ensuring that decisions are both ethically sound and procedurally correct. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate a critical aircraft component requires immediate replacement to resume essential flight training operations. The maintenance team has completed the replacement, but due to time constraints and pressure from the Flight Operations Department, there is a proposal to expedite the return to service by relying on the lead mechanic's verbal confirmation of a satisfactory test flight, bypassing the final documented inspection and sign-off by the Quality Assurance Department, which approach best upholds the Aeronautical University Institute's commitment to safety and regulatory compliance. Option A. Implement the repair and return the aircraft to service based on a common practice of informal verification among experienced maintenance staff to expedite operations when necessary. Option B. Authorize the return to service based on the chief engineer's personal assurance that the repair is sound, given their extensive experience, even if the formal sign-off process is incomplete. Option C. Proceed with the return to service based on the lead mechanic's verbal confirmation and the satisfactory test flight, as this demonstrates operational efficiency and trust in experienced personnel. Option D. Immediately halt the return to service and ensure all required post-repair inspections, documentation, and final sign-off by the Quality Assurance Department are completed as per the Aeronautical University Institute's Safety Management System and applicable aviation regulations before the aircraft is cleared for flight. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the return to service based on the lead mechanic's verbal confirmation and the satisfactory test flight, as this demonstrates operational efficiency and trust in experienced personnel. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge stemming from a potential conflict between an immediate operational need and the established safety protocols of an aviation institution. The pressure to expedite a critical repair, especially one impacting flight operations, can create a temptation to bypass or shorten standard procedures. This requires careful judgment to balance operational efficiency with the paramount importance of safety and regulatory compliance. The institution's reputation and the safety of its students and staff are at stake. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review and adherence to the Aeronautical University Institute's established safety management system, SMS, and relevant aviation regulations. This means ensuring all required documentation, inspections, and certifications are completed and verified before the aircraft is returned to service. This approach is right because it prioritizes safety, which is the cornerstone of aviation operations, and is mandated by the Aeronautical University Institute's governing bodies and national aviation authorities. It upholds the principle of safety first, by ensuring that any deviation from standard operating procedures is formally assessed, approved, and documented, thereby maintaining accountability and minimizing risk. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with the repair based solely on the mechanic's assurance without formal verification and documentation fails to comply with the Aeronautical University Institute's SMS and aviation regulations. This bypasses critical safety checks and documentation requirements, creating a significant risk of an undetected fault or noncompliance. It is ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it places undue trust in a single individual's assessment without independent validation, which is contrary to the principles of robust safety management. Authorizing the return to service based on a verbal confirmation from the chief engineer, even if experienced, without the completion of all required post-repair inspections and sign-offs, is also a failure. While the chief engineer's experience is valuable, it does not supersede the documented procedures designed to ensure comprehensive safety assurance. This approach risks overlooking critical details that only a formal, multi-stage inspection process can identify. Relying on a common practice or informal understanding within the maintenance department to expedite the process is a direct violation of established protocols and regulatory requirements. Aviation safety is built on strict adherence to documented procedures, not on informal shortcuts. This approach demonstrates a disregard for the systematic safety measures put in place to prevent accidents and maintain airworthiness. Professional reasoning. Professionals in aviation must adopt a systematic decision-making process that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the institution's safety management system, SMS, and all applicable national aviation regulations. 2. Recognizing potential conflicts between operational pressures and safety requirements. 3. Always adhering to documented procedures for maintenance, inspection, and return to service. 4. seeking formal approval for any proposed deviations from standard procedures, ensuring these deviations are risk-assessed and documented. 5. Maintaining clear and comprehensive records of all maintenance activities and certifications. 6. Fostering a culture where safety concerns can be raised without fear of reprisal. Question 11. Comparative studies suggest that universities often face pressure to balance immediate financial needs with the strict stipulations of research grants. If the Aeronautical University Institute receives a grant specifically for the development of advanced drone navigation systems, and a sudden need arises to cover unexpected administrative costs for a different, unrelated department, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the Institute's administration? Option A. Proceed with the purchase of the essential research equipment for the drone navigation project as planned, and explore alternative internal funding sources or budget adjustments to address the administrative costs. Option B. Utilize the drone navigation grant funds for the administrative costs, justifying it as an indirect cost necessary for the overall functioning of the university that supports research. Option C. Immediately reallocate a portion of the drone navigation grant funds to cover the administrative shortfall, assuming the overall financial health of the university will eventually compensate for it. Option D. Inform the funding body of the administrative shortfall and request permission to temporarily divert the grant funds, while simultaneously exploring other avenues to resolve the administrative issue. Correct answer is C. Immediately reallocate a portion of the drone navigation grant funds to cover the administrative shortfall, assuming the overall financial health of the university will eventually compensate for it. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning the responsible use of research funding. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam context implies a focus on academic integrity and adherence to research funding guidelines, which are typically stringent to prevent misuse and ensure accountability. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing pressures without compromising the institution's reputation or violating established protocols. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the specific grant agreement terms and seeking formal clarification from the funding body regarding any ambiguities. This upholds the principle of transparency and accountability in research funding. By consulting the grant agreement and engaging directly with the funding agency, the university demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory compliance, which are paramount in academic research. This proactive stance ensures that all expenditures are justifiable and aligned with the intended purpose of the grant, thereby safeguarding against potential audit failures or reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves reallocating funds without explicit approval from the funding body represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action bypasses established procedures for grant management and could be construed as a breach of contract, potentially leading to the clawback of funds, suspension of future funding, and severe reputational damage to the university. Another incorrect approach, such as using the funds for general operational expenses not directly related to the research project, also violates the principle of restricted use of grant funds. Research grants are typically awarded for specific purposes, and diversion of these funds for unrelated activities is a clear violation of the grant's terms and conditions, undermining the trust placed in the institution by the funding body. A third incorrect approach, such as delaying the purchase of essential research equipment to cover immediate operational shortfalls, could jeopardize the research project itself, failing the primary objective for which the funds were granted and demonstrating poor stewardship of research resources. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough review of all relevant contractual obligations and regulatory guidelines. This should be followed by an assessment of the potential consequences of each possible course of action, considering both financial and ethical implications. When faced with ambiguity or unforeseen circumstances, the most prudent step is to seek clarification from the relevant authorities. In this case, the funding body, rather than making unilateral decisions that could lead to non-compliance. Question 12. Compliance review shows that a student pilot, during a simulated emergency procedure training session, observed a subtle but persistent deviation in the aircraft's attitude indicator that was not immediately apparent to the instructor. The student pilot is concerned this could indicate a developing instrument malfunction. What is the most appropriate course of action for the student pilot in this situation, considering the Aeronautical University Institute's regulatory framework and safety guidelines? Option A. Discreetly make a note of the deviation in their personal logbook and continue with the training session, assuming the instructor is aware. Option B. Immediately inform the instructor of the observed deviation and request a formal check of the attitude indicator's functionality. Option C. Wait until after the training session concludes and then casually mention the observation to the instructor without emphasizing its potential safety implications. Option D. Attempt to recalibrate the attitude indicator themselves during the simulation to see if the deviation corrects. The correct answer is B. Immediately inform the instructor of the observed deviation and request a formal check of the attitude indicator's functionality. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need to address a potential safety issue and the established protocols for reporting and investigation. The Aeronautical University Institute, like any aviation-related institution, operates under stringent regulations designed to ensure the highest safety standards. Navigating this situation requires a deep understanding of these regulations, ethical obligations, and the importance of maintaining procedural integrity. The correct approach involves prioritizing immediate safety concerns while strictly adhering to the established reporting channels and investigatory procedures. This demonstrates a commitment to both safety and regulatory compliance. By reporting the observed anomaly through the designated channels, the individual ensures that the issue is formally documented and can be investigated by the appropriate authorities within the institute. This upholds the principle of due process and allows for a systematic resolution, preventing potential escalation or misinterpretation of the situation. This aligns with the overarching regulatory framework of aviation safety, which emphasizes thorough investigation and adherence to established protocols before implementing corrective actions. An incorrect approach of directly intervening without proper authorization or reporting would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the established safety management system, potentially leading to unverified interventions that could inadvertently create new hazards or compromise ongoing investigations. It undermines the authority of designated safety officers and investigative bodies, creating a chaotic and unsafe environment. Furthermore, it could be seen as a breach of professional conduct, as it disregards the established chain of command and reporting mechanisms crucial for maintaining order and accountability within an aviation institution. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the anomaly due to its perceived minor nature would also be a severe ethical and regulatory failure. Aviation safety operates on the principle that even minor deviations can be precursors to significant incidents. Failing to report such anomalies demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the proactive safety culture that the Institute is mandated to uphold. This inaction could have catastrophic consequences if the anomaly were to escalate, leading to potential accidents and severe repercussions for the individual and the institution. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the institute's safety management system and reporting procedures. When an anomaly is observed, the first step is to assess its immediate safety implications. If there is an imminent risk, immediate but controlled, action to mitigate that risk might be necessary, always with the intent to report immediately thereafter. However, in most cases, the priority is to document the observation accurately and report it through the designated channels without delay. This ensures that the issue is handled by those with the expertise and authority to investigate and implement appropriate corrective actions, thereby upholding both safety and regulatory integrity. Question 13. Regulatory review indicates that a high-achieving candidate for the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam, who has demonstrated exceptional aptitude in preliminary assessments, is facing a temporary administrative delay in submitting a mandatory prerequisite document due to circumstances beyond their control. The Institute's admissions department is under pressure to finalize cohort numbers for immediate operational planning. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Proceed with a conditional offer of admission, contingent upon the timely submission of the missing prerequisite document within a clearly defined and documented timeframe, as per established institute policy for exceptional cases. Option B. Advise the candidate to withdraw their application and reapply in the next admission cycle to ensure full compliance with all documentation requirements. Option C. Seek an informal opinion from a senior faculty member not involved in admissions to determine if the document can be overlooked in this instance. Option D. Expedite the candidate's admission by waiving the requirement for the specific prerequisite document, citing the candidate's overall merit and the institute's immediate operational needs. The correct answer is A. Proceed with a conditional offer of admission, contingent upon the timely submission of the missing prerequisite document within a clearly defined and documented timeframe, as per established institute policy for exceptional cases. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate operational needs of an aviation institution and the long-term implications of adhering to stringent regulatory frameworks governing academic integrity and admissions. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam's regulatory framework, which is paramount, dictates a strict adherence to established admission criteria and processes. Any deviation, even with perceived operational benefits, risks undermining the credibility of the institution and the validity of its entrance examinations. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of the existing regulatory framework to identify any provisions that might allow for exceptional circumstances or require specific procedural steps for handling such requests. This approach prioritizes compliance with the Aeronautical University Institute's established rules and guidelines, ensuring that any decision is defensible and transparent. The regulatory justification lies in upholding the integrity of the admission process, which is designed to ensure that all candidates meet the required standards for entry into specialized aeronautical studies. Ethical considerations also demand fairness and equal treatment for all applicants, preventing any perception of favoritism or undue influence. An incorrect approach that bypasses established procedures to accommodate a specific request, even if seemingly beneficial for immediate operational needs, fails to uphold the regulatory framework. This could lead to accusations of procedural impropriety, unfairness to other applicants, and a potential erosion of the institute's reputation. Such an approach disregards the principle of due process inherent in regulatory compliance. Another incorrect approach, which involves seeking informal guidance from external, non-regulatory sources, is also professionally unsound. This circumvents the official channels for interpreting and applying the institute's regulations, potentially leading to misinterpretations or decisions that are not aligned with the spirit or letter of the law. It fails to provide a documented and justifiable basis for any decision. Finally, an approach that prioritizes immediate operational expediency over regulatory compliance is fundamentally flawed. While operational efficiency is important, it cannot supersede the legal and ethical obligations established by the Aeronautical University Institute's governing regulations. This approach risks creating a precedent for future noncompliance and could lead to significant legal and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the situation. 2. Identifying any ambiguities or potential exceptions within the framework. 3. Consulting official channels for clarification or interpretation if needed. 4. Documenting all steps taken and decisions made. 5. Ensuring that any action taken is transparent, fair, and demonstrably compliant with the established regulatory framework. Question 14. Consider a scenario where a prominent aerospace industry executive offers a substantial donation to the Aeronautical University Institute to fund a new research center focused on advanced propulsion systems. The executive expresses a strong desire for the center's research to prioritize a specific, proprietary engine design that their company is developing, and requests significant influence over the selection of research projects and the publication of findings. What is the most ethically and professionally sound approach for the university's leadership to take in evaluating this donation offer? Option A. Formally establish an independent review committee comprising faculty from relevant departments and the Institute's Research Ethics Board to assess the proposed research center's academic merit, alignment with the Institute's strategic research priorities, and potential conflicts of interest, while maintaining open communication with the donor about the process and university policies. Option B. Accept the donation, but agree to the executive's terms regarding research project selection and publication rights to ensure a strong and lasting relationship with a key industry partner. Option C. Immediately accept the donation and begin planning the research center, as the significant financial contribution and industry partnership are crucial for the institute's growth and reputation. Option D. Reject the donation outright due to the executive's explicit interest in influencing the research direction, as any external influence on academic pursuits is inherently problematic. The correct answer is A. Formally establish an independent review committee comprising faculty from relevant departments and the Institute's Research Ethics Board to assess the proposed research center's academic merit, alignment with the Institute's strategic research priorities, and potential conflicts of interest, while maintaining open communication with the donor about the process and university policies. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate financial interests of a potential donor and the long-term academic integrity and reputation of the Aeronautical University Institute. The decision-maker must navigate the delicate balance of fostering relationships with benefactors while upholding the university's commitment to unbiased research and education. As mandated by the Aeronautical University Institute's internal policies and general principles of academic ethics, the pressure to accept funding, especially for a significant project, can be substantial, making objective evaluation critical. The correct approach involves rigorously assessing the proposed research project's alignment with the Institute's academic mission and established research priorities, independent of the donor's specific interests or potential influence. This includes a thorough review of the project's scientific merit, feasibility, and ethical implications by relevant academic committees. The justification for this approach lies in the Aeronautical University Institute's commitment to maintaining academic freedom and ensuring that research outcomes are driven by scholarly inquiry rather than external agendas. Adhering to established university policies on research funding and donor relations, which typically emphasize transparency and the avoidance of conflicts of interest, is paramount. This ensures that the Institute's reputation for objective and high-quality aeronautical education and research remains uncompromised. An incorrect approach would be to accept the funding without a comprehensive, independent review, prioritizing the donor's desire to influence the research direction. This fails to uphold the principle of academic integrity, as it suggests that research can be dictated by financial contributions, potentially leading to biased findings or a curriculum that serves external interests. Another incorrect approach would be to reject the funding outright solely based on the donor's stated interest in a specific outcome, without first evaluating the project's academic merit. This could stifle potentially valuable research and alienate a willing benefactor without proper due diligence. A third incorrect approach would be to accept the funding, but agree to all the donor's conditions regarding publication and dissemination of results without independent oversight. This compromises the university's control over its intellectual output and could lead to the suppression or manipulation of research findings, violating ethical standards and potentially university policy. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes institutional values and established policies. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue, potential conflict between donor interests and academic integrity. 2. Consulting relevant policies, reviewing the Aeronautical University Institute's guidelines on research funding, donor relations, and conflict of interest. 3. Seeking expert input, engaging academic departments, research ethics boards, and legal counsel if necessary. 4. Objective evaluation, ensuring the proposed project undergoes a fair and impartial review process based on its academic and scientific merit. 5. Transparent communication, maintaining open dialogue with the donor regarding the review process and any potential concerns, while clearly articulating the Institute's principles. Question 15. Strategic planning requires the head of the Aeronautical University Institute's Aerospace Engineering Department to address a significant budget deficit, while simultaneously enhancing the department's research output and student recruitment. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible academic leadership and long-term institutional sustainability within the regulatory framework of a university entrance exam? Option A. Develop a multi-year strategic plan that integrates budget management with academic and research goals, involving faculty and stakeholder consultation to identify innovative funding streams and program enhancements. Option B. reduce the number of available student research opportunities, and limit faculty participation in academic conferences to conserve departmental funds. Option C. Implement immediate, across-the-board budget cuts to all departmental expenditures, including faculty development and research grants, to balance the books for the current fiscal year. Option D. Prioritize securing short-term, high-impact research grants from industry partners, even if these grants do not directly align with the department's core academic curriculum or long-term research vision. The correct answer is A. Develop a multi-year strategic plan that integrates budget management with academic and research goals, involving faculty and stakeholder consultation to identify innovative funding streams and program enhancements. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of a university department with the long-term strategic goals of maintaining academic excellence and fulfilling its mission. The head of department must navigate these competing demands while adhering to the regulatory framework governing higher education institutions, which typically emphasizes accountability, transparency, and the responsible stewardship of resources. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions, while addressing current needs, do not compromise the university's accreditation, reputation, or its ability to attract future students and faculty. The correct approach involves prioritizing the development of a comprehensive, multi-year strategic plan that aligns with the Aeronautical University Institute's overall mission and values. This plan should identify key academic and research priorities, assess resource needs, and outline strategies for sustainable growth and innovation. It necessitates engagement with various stakeholders, including faculty, students, alumni, and industry partners, to gather input and build consensus. This approach is professionally sound because it demonstrates a commitment to long-term institutional health and academic integrity, which are paramount in the higher education sector. It aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of responsible governance and forward-thinking management, ensuring the university remains competitive and relevant. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost-cutting measures without considering their impact on academic programs or research capabilities would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a decline in the quality of education, a loss of faculty expertise, and damage to the university's reputation, potentially jeopardizing its accreditation. Such a short-sighted strategy fails to uphold the fiduciary duty of responsible resource management and strategic foresight expected of university leadership. Another incorrect approach that involves making unilateral decisions without consulting relevant stakeholders, such as faculty committees or departmental advisory boards, would also be professionally unsound. This undermines collaborative governance principles and can lead to resentment, decreased morale, and a lack of buy-in for any implemented changes. It disregards the importance of diverse perspectives in strategic decision-making, which is often implicitly or explicitly encouraged by institutional policies and ethical guidelines. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes external funding opportunities over core academic mission, without a clear strategy for integrating these opportunities into the university's long-term vision, would be problematic. While external funding is important, it should serve to enhance, not dictate, the university's academic direction. A failure to align funding with strategic goals can lead to a fragmented and unfocused institutional trajectory. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the problem and its scope, considering both immediate and long-term implications. 2. Gather comprehensive information from all relevant sources, including internal data and external benchmarks. 3. Identify and engage key stakeholders to understand their perspectives and concerns. 4. Develop a range of potential solutions, evaluating each against the university's mission, values, and regulatory obligations. 5. Select the solution that best balances competing interests and promotes the long-term health and academic excellence of the institution. 6. Implement the chosen solution with clear communication and a plan for monitoring and evaluation. Question 16. The investigation demonstrates that a student pilot, during a solo training flight, observed a significant and unexpected fluctuation in the aircraft's engine oil pressure gauge. While the fluctuation did not immediately lead to a loss of power, it presented a clear potential hazard to flight safety. The student pilot, recalling their training on emergency procedures, managed to maintain control of the aircraft and land safely at a designated alternate airfield. However, upon landing, the student pilot hesitated to immediately file a formal incident report, considering whether to first conduct a more thorough personal assessment of the engine's performance and the gauge's reliability before involving the Aeronautical University Institute's safety department. Which of the following approaches best reflects the professional and regulatory obligations in this situation? Option A. Conduct a detailed personal inspection of the engine and the oil pressure gauge, attempting to diagnose the exact cause of the fluctuation, and then file a report once a definitive conclusion is reached. Option B. Delay filing a formal report until the next scheduled debriefing session with the instructor to discuss the observation in detail and formulate a joint report. Option C. Only file a report if the engine subsequently fails or if there is evidence of significant damage to the aircraft upon landing. Option D. Immediately land the aircraft safely and then promptly file a comprehensive incident report detailing the observed engine oil pressure fluctuation and the actions taken, initiating the formal investigation process. The correct answer is D. Immediately land the aircraft safely and then promptly file a comprehensive incident report detailing the observed engine oil pressure fluctuation and the actions taken, initiating the formal investigation process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need to address a potential safety hazard and the procedural requirements for reporting and authorization within the Aeronautical University Institute's framework. The pressure to act quickly to prevent an incident must be balanced against established protocols designed to ensure thoroughness, accountability, and adherence to aviation safety regulations. Careful judgment is required to navigate this tension effectively. Correct approach involves prioritizing immediate safety actions while simultaneously initiating the formal reporting process as stipulated by the Aeronautical University Institute's internal regulations and relevant aviation authorities. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the immediate safety concern, thereby fulfilling the paramount ethical and regulatory obligation to ensure the safety of flight operations and personnel. Simultaneously, by initiating the formal reporting process, it upholds procedural integrity, ensures proper documentation, and allows for a comprehensive review and corrective action, aligning with the principles of safety management systems and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that involves delaying the formal reporting to conduct a more extensive personal investigation before notifying authorities is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for established reporting timelines and procedures, potentially leading to a lack of timely oversight and intervention by the relevant safety bodies. It also risks compromising the integrity of the investigation by introducing personal bias or missing critical early evidence. Another incorrect approach, which is to only report the incident after a full, definitive root cause analysis has been completed, is also professionally unacceptable. This delays crucial information flow to safety oversight bodies, preventing them from initiating their own assessments or providing guidance. It also places an undue burden on the individual to complete a complex analysis that may be beyond their scope or expertise, and it fails to acknowledge that initial reporting is often a trigger for a broader, multifaceted investigation. A further incorrect approach, which is to only report the incident if it directly resulted in an accident or significant damage, is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. Aviation safety regulations mandate reporting of incidents and hazards that could lead to an accident, not just those that have already done so. This approach demonstrates a misunderstanding of proactive safety management and the importance of learning from near misses and potential hazards to prevent future occurrences. Professionals in this field should employ a decision-making framework that begins with immediate risk assessment and mitigation. This is followed by prompt adherence to established reporting protocols, ensuring all required information is submitted within the stipulated timeframes. The framework emphasizes transparency, collaboration with safety authorities, and a commitment to continuous improvement based on documented findings. When faced with a potential conflict between immediate action and procedural requirements, the guiding principle should always be to prioritize safety, while ensuring that all actions are subsequently documented and reported according to established regulations. Question 17. The analysis reveals that a prominent aerospace industry executive has offered a substantial donation to the Aeronautical University Institute, earmarked for a new research facility. However, preliminary inquiries suggest the executive's company has faced recent scrutiny regarding its labor practices. Considering the institute's commitment to ethical conduct and its role in shaping future aerospace professionals, which approach best navigates this complex situation? Option A. Conduct a thorough due diligence process to investigate the source of the funds and the executive's company's practices, assessing any potential reputational risks or conflicts of interest before making a decision. Option B. Immediately accept the donation to secure the funding for the new research facility, as the financial benefit is significant and the scrutiny is merely an allegation. Option C. Reject the donation outright due to the unsubstantiated allegations, to avoid any potential association with controversial practices. Option D. Accept the donation but impose strict, undisclosed conditions on how the funds are used to mitigate any perceived negative association. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough due diligence process to investigate the source of the funds and the executive's company's practices, assessing any potential reputational risks or conflicts of interest before making a decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate financial interests of a potential donor and the long-term strategic goals and ethical obligations of the Aeronautical University Institute. The pressure to accept funding without thorough due diligence can compromise academic integrity and institutional reputation. Careful judgment is required to balance external opportunities with internal values and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the proposed donation, including an assessment of the donor's background, the source of funds, and any potential reputational risks or conflicts of interest. This aligns with the Aeronautical University Institute's commitment to maintaining high ethical standards and ensuring that all financial contributions support its mission and values. Specifically, it adheres to principles of good governance and financial stewardship, which are implicitly expected of educational institutions to ensure accountability to students, faculty, and the wider public. While specific regulations for university entrance exams might not detail donation acceptance, the underlying ethical framework for educational institutions prioritizes integrity and responsible resource management. An incorrect approach would be to accept the donation solely based on the substantial financial offer without any scrutiny. This bypasses essential due diligence, potentially exposing the institute to funding from illicit sources or donors with agendas that could compromise academic freedom or institutional independence. Such an action would violate the ethical imperative to act in the best interest of the institution and its stakeholders, and could lead to reputational damage and loss of public trust. Another incorrect approach would be to reject the donation outright due to a minor, unsubstantiated concern raised by a single individual without a formal review process. This could lead to the loss of a valuable opportunity that could significantly benefit the institute's programs and research, and demonstrates a lack of a structured decision-making process. It fails to uphold the principle of exploring all avenues for institutional advancement while maintaining ethical boundaries. A third incorrect approach would be to accept the donation with undisclosed conditions attached by the donor. This creates a hidden conflict of interest and can undermine the transparency and fairness expected of an academic institution. It violates the ethical obligation to ensure that all donations are in the best interest of the institute and its educational mission, free from undue influence or undisclosed obligations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve establishing clear policies and procedures for accepting donations, including a multi-stakeholder review committee. This committee should assess potential donations against established ethical guidelines, institutional mission, and risk factors. Transparency in the decision-making process and clear communication with all relevant parties are crucial. Professionals should always prioritize the long-term integrity and reputation of the institution over short-term financial gains. Question 18. Process analysis reveals that during a critical advanced flight training exercise at the Aeronautical University Institute, a student pilot and their instructor observe a minor, intermittent fluctuation in a specific flight instrument reading that deviates slightly from expected parameters. The flight is nearing its scheduled completion, and the deviation does not appear to compromise immediate flight safety. The instructor is faced with the decision of whether to log this anomaly for formal investigation or to proceed with the flight's conclusion and address it post-flight, given the time constraints and the perceived low risk. Option A. Attempt to recalibrate the instrument in flight to correct the fluctuation before logging it, to present a clean flight record. Option B. Log the anomaly in the flight logbook with a detailed description of the observation, and initiate the Institute's standard procedure for reporting instrument discrepancies, even if it means a slight delay in post-flight debriefing. Option C. Conclude the flight as scheduled and verbally inform the maintenance department about the instrument fluctuation during the post-flight handover, assuming it will be addressed in due course. Option D. Ignore the minor fluctuation as it did not impact flight safety, and focus on completing the training objectives and debriefing on time. The correct answer is B. Log the anomaly in the flight logbook with a detailed description of the observation, and initiate the Institute's standard procedure for reporting instrument discrepancies, even if it means a slight delay in post-flight debriefing. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need for operational continuity and the strict adherence to regulatory compliance, particularly concerning the integrity of flight data and the reporting of anomalies. The Aeronautical University Institute, as a training institution, has a heightened responsibility to model and enforce the highest standards of aviation safety and regulatory practice for its future professionals. The pressure to overlook a minor discrepancy for the sake of completing a critical training flight, while understandable from an operational perspective, directly contravenes the principle of, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, and the regulatory mandate for accurate and timely reporting of all flight-related events, regardless of perceived severity. The correct approach involves prioritizing regulatory compliance and data integrity above immediate operational expediency. This means meticulously documenting the observed anomaly, even if it appears minor, and initiating the prescribed reporting procedure. This aligns with the fundamental tenets of aviation safety management systems, which emphasize proactive identification and mitigation of risks through thorough data collection and analysis. Specifically, adherence to the Aeronautical University Institute's Internal Flight Operations Manual and any applicable National Aviation Authority regulations, e.g., those governing flight data recording and reporting, is paramount. This approach ensures that all potential safety issues are captured, investigated, and addressed, thereby upholding the integrity of the training program and fostering a culture of safety among students. An incorrect approach would be to disregard the anomaly due to time constraints or the perceived insignificance of the issue. This failure to document and report violates the principle of complete and accurate record keeping, which is a cornerstone of regulatory compliance. It also undermines the learning objectives of the training program by implicitly condoning a deviation from standard operating procedures. Furthermore, failing to report could lead to a cascade of negative consequences, including the inability to identify systemic issues, potential regulatory penalties if discovered during an audit, and a compromised safety record for the institution. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to fix the anomaly without proper documentation or authorization, which bypasses established safety protocols and introduces further risks of data manipulation or misinterpretation. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue, a potential discrepancy in flight data. 2. Consulting relevant regulations and institutional policies, reviewing the Flight Operations Manual and any applicable National Aviation Authority guidelines. 3. Assessing the risk, understanding the potential implications of the anomaly, however minor it may seem. 4. Following established procedures, initiating the documentation and reporting process as mandated. 5. Communicating transparently, informing relevant supervisors and stakeholders about the situation and the steps being taken. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are grounded in regulatory requirements and ethical responsibilities, fostering a robust safety culture. Question 19. To address the challenge of securing vital funding for the Aeronautical University Institute while upholding the integrity of its admissions process, which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines governing university entrance examinations? Option A. Creating a separate, less demanding entrance examination for candidates from affluent backgrounds to ensure a higher acceptance rate from this demographic, thereby encouraging their families to donate. Option B. Implementing a transparent admissions process where all candidates are evaluated strictly based on their performance in the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam and other objective academic criteria, regardless of any potential for future financial contributions from their families or associated entities. Option C. Establishing a philanthropic admissions track that offers a simplified entry examination and guaranteed placement for candidates whose families commit to substantial donations to the institute. Option D. Allowing the admissions committee to consider the financial background of candidates as a significant factor in borderline cases, giving preference to those with greater potential for future financial support. The correct answer is B. Implementing a transparent admissions process where all candidates are evaluated strictly based on their performance in the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam and other objective academic criteria, regardless of any potential for future financial contributions from their families or associated entities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for funding and the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and transparency in its admissions process. The Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam is governed by specific regulatory frameworks designed to ensure fairness, meritocracy, and the selection of candidates best suited for a demanding field. The challenge lies in navigating the pressure to secure financial support without compromising these core principles. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the established examination regulations and ethical guidelines for university admissions. This means ensuring that all candidates, regardless of their background or potential for future financial contributions, are assessed solely on their academic merit as demonstrated through the entrance exam and other objective criteria. This approach is justified by the regulatory framework of the Aeronautical University Institute entrance exam, which mandates a fair and impartial selection process. Upholding these regulations protects the reputation of the institute, ensures the quality of its graduates, and maintains public trust in the educational system. It aligns with the ethical principle of equal opportunity and the professional responsibility of educators and administrators to act with integrity. An incorrect approach would be to allow potential financial contributions to influence the admissions decision-making process. This could manifest as offering preferential treatment or relaxed entry standards to candidates whose families or associated organizations have pledged significant donations. Such an approach directly violates the regulatory framework by undermining the merit-based selection process. It introduces bias and inequity, compromising the academic standards the institute is meant to uphold. Ethically, it represents a conflict of interest and a breach of professional conduct, as it prioritizes financial gain over the integrity of the educational mission. Another incorrect approach would be to create a separate, less rigorous admissions track for candidates from wealthy backgrounds, even if it is framed as a special program. This still circumvents the established examination process and creates a two-tiered system that is inherently unfair and discriminatory. It violates the spirit and letter of the regulations designed to ensure a level playing field for all aspiring aeronautical professionals. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to selectively disclose or withhold information about the examination process or candidate performance based on their financial standing. This lack of transparency erodes trust and suggests that the admissions process is not objective. It violates ethical principles of honesty and fairness, and likely contravenes specific regulations regarding the conduct of examinations and admissions. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulations and ethical codes. When faced with pressure to compromise these principles, professionals should 1. Identify the core values and regulatory requirements at stake. 2. Assess the potential consequences of any proposed action on academic integrity, fairness, and the institute's reputation. 3. Consult relevant policies and seek guidance from legal or ethics officers if necessary. 4. Prioritize adherence to established procedures and ethical standards, even when facing external pressures. 5. Document all decisions and the rationale behind them. Question 20. The review process indicates that a new cohort of aspiring commercial pilots is nearing the completion of their training, and a key industry partner has expressed urgent demand for their immediate certification due to a projected pilot shortage. The Aeronautical University Institute's internal quality assurance team is considering expediting the final assessment phase by relying on the instructor's long-standing experience and the existing curriculum's historical success, rather than conducting a full, formal revalidation of the assessment against the most recent National Aviation Authority training syllabi, which approach best upholds the regulatory framework and ethical responsibilities of the Aeronautical University Institute. Option A. Implement a supplementary, informal assessment conducted by the industry partner to gauge immediate readiness, alongside the existing internal assessment. Option B. Halt the assessment process and immediately initiate a comprehensive review and formal revalidation of the assessment methods and curriculum against the latest National Aviation Authority syllabi before any further steps are taken. Option C. Proceed with the expedited assessment based on instructor experience and historical curriculum success, with a commitment to a full revalidation post-certification. Option D. Approve the certification of the new cohort based on the instructor's professional judgment and the industry partner's urgent request, assuming the curriculum remains fundamentally sound. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the expedited assessment based on instructor experience and historical curriculum success, with a commitment to a full revalidation post-certification. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need for operational continuity and the imperative to adhere to established regulatory frameworks governing aeronautical training and certification. The pressure to expedite the process for a critical stakeholder group, such as prospective pilots, can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the assessment and, consequently, aviation safety. Careful judgment is required to balance stakeholder expectations with the non-negotiable safety standards mandated by the Aeronautical University Institute's governing body. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the existing curriculum and assessment methods against the latest regulatory requirements. This ensures that any proposed changes or validations are not only compliant, but also robust in preparing students for their roles. Specifically, it requires consulting the Aeronautical University Institute's official curriculum guidelines and the relevant National Aviation Authority's training standards. This systematic process guarantees that the educational outcomes meet the stringent safety and competency benchmarks essential for pilot licensing and operation. Adherence to these documented procedures is a fundamental ethical and regulatory obligation, safeguarding both the institution's reputation and public safety. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the formal review process and rely on informal assurances or past practices. This fails to account for potential updates in regulations or best practices, thereby risking the issuance of certifications that do not meet current standards. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the stakeholders' urgency over the integrity of the assessment, potentially leading to a diluted or inadequate evaluation of student competency. This directly contravenes the regulatory mandate to ensure all certified individuals possess the necessary skills and knowledge for safe flight operations. Furthermore, making decisions based solely on anecdotal evidence or the perceived experience of individuals, without formal validation against established criteria, represents a significant ethical lapse and a failure to uphold the institution's commitment to rigorous training and assessment. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core regulatory and ethical obligations. This involves consulting the official documentation of the Aeronautical University Institute and the relevant aviation authority. The next step is to assess the impact of any proposed action on student competency and aviation safety. If there is any doubt about compliance or adequacy, the default position should be to follow the established, formal review and validation procedures. Stakeholder needs should be addressed through transparent communication about the regulatory process and timelines, rather than by compromising the process itself.